Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Stuff Zone channel. If you're joining me here for the first time, I am so excited to have you. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking about a very popular buzzword in the modern sewing community, deadstock. Now, deadstock fabric basically means leftover fabric from the fashion industry. Many companies selling into the home sewing market use deadstock, and it's often championed as a more sustainable way to sew. Not only are you meant to be preventing fabrics from going into landfill, but it also gives home sewists a way to access fabric from top brands. But is that really the case? Today we're going to unpack deadstock, explaining how it comes to exist, whether or not it's truly sustainable, and how to access it. We're even going to go on a visit to a very unique fabric warehouse and meet an actual deadstock dealer with a giveaway at the end for those who stick around. Before we get into this though, I do want to flag that I'm not interested in shaming any individuals, any sewing businesses with this video. Is the world on fire? Unfortunately, yes, but the spoiler here is that that really isn't driven by the home sewing market. Yes, everything is connected, but if you do want to prioritize your environmental activism, this is probably not a priority issue. Instead, the goal of this video is to help you understand what the word deadstock actually means, how to evaluate what really is deadstock, and how to incorporate it into your home sewing in a way that's going to work for you. This will be an interesting one, a bit more technical than I've done before, so let's get into it. In order for us to understand how deadstock fabrics leaves the typical fashion supply chain, I need to give you an overview of how the fabric supply chain actually works. This is going to be massively oversimplified, but just stick with me here. At the first stage of the supply chain, we have our raw material extraction. This is where we get our raw fibers, whether plant material like cotton, animal material, or even extruded synthetic fibers like polyester. Then we have processing, which is happening over a few different stages, and that's where the fabric or textile mill comes in. First, spinning transforms raw fibers into yarn, and then those yarns are either woven or knitted into fabrics. Of course, there's loads of processing that then happens on top of that, cleaning, dyeing, printing, but that's basically how we end up with all the pretty fabrics that we know and love. In later stages, of course, we have the garment assembly and distribution, but we're just going to be focused on fabric for today. Now, designers will often work directly with fabric mills to create the specific fabrics that they want for their collections. Alternatively, designers sometimes are going to fabric shows and browsing a number of suppliers sourcing exclusive prints. So if they are ordering what they want, why do we have so much deadstock fabric? It really comes from both the textile mill and the end designer. Firstly, textile mills need to do sample runs, testing smaller batches of prints before they're committing to the full orders. Then there's of course just a level of overproduction that happens. This is both because they need to meet demand, but also because they're trying to optimize the efficiency of their machines. Finally, as you can imagine, there are always going to be quality control issues that lead to deadstock. A design might, say, have a flaw that runs alongside the selvage. It's something that a home sewist could really easily work around, but it's just not manageable at an industrial kind of garment production scale. This type of mill-produced deadstock tends to be the cheapest deadstock that you're going to find. In London, the best example of this would be Walthamstow Market, one of my favorite fabric markets. You're going to find lots of shops and stalls absolutely loaded with deadstock fabric, some of which is going to be on rolls, but you'll also just see piles of fabric samples and remnants in bins, sometimes actually with the textile mill labeling still intact. Now, is this really deadstock? It is brand new fabric, it's never been sold on to a designer, and in some cases it was never actually intended to be sold on. It can be a bit of a gray area. We'll talk more about the pros and cons of mill surplus later, but before that, let's talk about the second deadstock channel, surplus fabric from fashion designers themselves. Now, we have to think about fashion designers on a spectrum here. If we start at one end with a true fast fashion producer like a Zara or, God forbid, a Shein, they're constantly updating and optimizing their releases to account for shifting consumer trends. Therefore, they might leave loads of fabric unused. Again, some of that they're leaving directly with the textile mill, but some of it they might pass on themselves. Some of that fabric is going to make its way into the home sewing supply chain as the fabric gets passed on to fabric dealers, I think jobbers they're called, other wholesalers. At the other end of the designer spectrum, we have our top fashion houses, and as you can imagine, it's going to be much more rare that you see their fabrics floating around. For one, lots of that fabric is being destroyed. Back in the day, brands just used to burn their excess inventory, sometimes excess fabric directly, but many brands have tried to phase out this practice due to backlash, although I suspect that many of them are still doing it. So instead of burning, some of this is just sitting around in warehouses instead. They will also often have strict non-resale agreements with their mill to prevent them from selling on the surplus. Of course, not all of them do this. It doesn't always happen, even if they try. And I do actually have a few pieces of designer deadstock in my collection. The blouse that I'm wearing right now, for those, I feel like people will ask, this is the Style Arc Teddy top. It's one of my favorite. I cover it in my last year's spring makes roundup. But this is an ex-Zimmerman linen that I was able to get through one of the fabric dealers here in London. But what about smaller, more local designers, those who maybe don't have, hundreds and hundreds of meters of fabric left over at the end of the year? These designers often have excess fabric, but they don't have an easy way of getting rid of it. So where does their dead stock go? Rather than tell you, I want to show you. We're going to go on a field trip today to a London-based warehouse shop called Last Yarn. Last Yarn is actually a home base for a dead stock fabric marketplace. All the fabric in this shop comes from designers selling off their surplus. So I'm going to take you along, I'm going to give you a tour of the shop, and then I'm going to let the lovely ladies of Last Yarn explain their business to you themselves. Let's pop on the tube for our first ever Steph Zone field trip and give them a visit. Now, Last Yarn is based in North London in Wood Green. The shop itself is a bit of a walk, it's in an unassuming spot, but once you get inside, you can see just how much fabric there is in there.
All right, guys, so as you can see, I'm in the Last Yarn warehouse right now, and it is a little overwhelming, but actually super well organized. I think the main thing I want to show you, though, are their special occasion fabrics. They have great staple fabrics as well, but I think it's the laces they have, the tweeds, the jacquards that are really, really special. So let's get into it.
So as I said, the shop is really stocked with fabric from high-end designers. Think lots of silk, laces, jacquards, some lovely tweeds. I loved the variety. These are fabrics that I don't typically sew with just because I don't do much occasion wear, and it was so nice to be inspired to try and make something new. I ended up getting 3 fabrics, 2 heavy kind of tweedy fabrics, and then a bright pink and orange jacquard, which I've already made into a skirt. But now I want to give you a chance to learn more about the shop from one of the co-founders of Last Yarn, Piarve. Let's go speak to her.
So I'm here with Piarve of Last Yarn, and I just had a few questions for her that I wanted to share with you all, help you get a bit of an understanding of the brand and their amazing products. So to start, I would love if you introduced yourself. How did you come to be here? How did this come to be here?
Yes, so Last Yarn, I thought I could take you back to how we came up with the idea. So interesting enough, before I even met Deborah, we both individually had ideas of kind of having a textile place like this. So at the time, Deborah, she's a designer, and she was designing, and what she noticed is she had piles of fabrics that were just piling up with all of her collections. And then on my side, I at the time was working for an interior design studio. So they did kind of, if you think of your perfect Instagram house, they kind of supplied all of the stuff for that. So tiles, walls, everything, cute baths, but they had a fabric section that they discontinued. And so something that I had to do was figure out what to do with all of these fabrics. It was like high quality fabrics. And that kind of led to my journey into, they have all of these fabrics, they don't want to let go of it. Where can it go? And on Deborah's side, she was working in the industry, and she noticed that she had all these fabrics that were just piling up. And I think there's something that we do as people that have fabrics, because I sew as a hobby, and something that I can't do is let go of my textiles.
Yeah, even the smallest scrap.
I know.
I can't throw it away. I want to, and I told myself I'm going to make a quilt, and I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not
there's something that we tell ourselves where we just think one day we're gonna use it one day, we're gonna use it one day, and it's actually the reason why I have a shed in my mum's garden, because I literally have like all my fabrics from just years piling up. So I guess me and Deborah met during COVID for a mutual friend. We actually met, the first time we saw each other face to face was actually here, so this space here is a collaboration with our first seller, who is one of the oldest bridal companies, and at the time they were bringing in all their fabrics and opening up literally decades of fabrics from just decades of collections. So that's why there is so much fabric. So and there's like laces, satins, everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of like bridal wear, high occasion, or special occasion fabric here.
Yeah, exactly. So the first time we met was here, and we realized, hold on, if we're having this problem where we're trying to get rid of our fabrics, there must be so many other people with the same issue. And so we thought, what if there was a marketplace, a bit like Depop, where you could sell fabrics, or where you can buy and sell fabrics. So if you are a designer, you can upload your fabrics. The issue with kind of the platforms that are out there at the moment is they aren't specific to fabric. So if you go on Last Yarn, you'll see that you've got like width, you've got like all the specifications to upload your fabrics. And yeah, and that's kind of how it started. So yeah, we worked on the tech. It takes a really long time to work on tech for some reason.
Building a website's horrible. Building a shopping website is horrible.
Yeah. And then
also you had to upload everything that's in here. Oh my god.
that was a job.
How long did that take?
I felt like that took the whole of the COVID period.
Yeah.
That was years. And I guess if COVID didn't happen, there wouldn't have been that downtime to kind of actually sit there, open up all of the fabric rolls, unravel them, take pictures of them. Like something that we're always thinking about is photographing fabrics and making it as true to life as possible. So that's another layer. Just another layer to think about.
So how does it work? So do the vendors, the sellers or designers, do they give you the fabric to sell on their behalf, or are they uploading it to the website themselves?
Yeah, so they're uploading it to their websites themselves.
Okay.
So you have
I didn't realize that it was like that direct. Yeah.
Yeah, so you are. So I guess the thing is with because traditionally, I guess when I think Deadstock fabric with being used within collections has become such a huge thing. And traditionally, what people do is you kind of knock on doors and you're like, "Hey, do you have any spare fabrics?" And some people say yes, some people say no. Some people are like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
You know? And so it's quite a long process. So we wanted to make that easier. So if you want to sell your fabrics or need to get rid of your fabrics, then you can then upload them, and then you create your own portal on the back end, upload everything, put everything on. And then as someone that's buying, you can then browse through all of the fabrics that are there. And then there's multiple sellers as well. So you can, browse by seller.
Okay, so the fabric that's in here is not even all that's on the website. There's going to be a lot more.
Yeah, so this is just one seller's fabric. And for some sellers, actually, we do have their fabrics here, depending on circumstances. But I think the nice thing is we actually do vet all the sellers before they come on. Because, again, there was this huge thing where Deadstock became so popular. I think I don't know if it was just a bit after COVID or before, during COVID. But then it got to the point where you noticed that people were selling new fabric as Deadstock.
It's like as branded, it'd be like Robert Kaufman or something creeping into the Deadstock supply. Yeah.
So it was, so for us, and also people do pick that up. So people do actually ask us, how do you know it's Deadstock? And actually we speak to all of our designers, we visit them. At the moment, everyone seems to have like some kind of either sustainability or ethic, moral grounds to their business or to them wanting to get rid of the fabrics. Sometimes it is old stock as well. So so some people are maybe producing new other stuff, but more responsibly. But actually, because of the way the industry has worked and still does work, they then have like piles of stuff that they want to give. But it's also a cost. I think people don't always realize how much time and effort it takes to roll out the fabric, cut and everything, which is why it was important that we could create a platform where people can sell on their fabric. Because I think, again, there's a debate with Deadstock where it's, it should always be free, whereas like we also we have something called the Last Yarn Academy, where we do gift loads of fabrics to students and charities and kind of sewing projects and stuff like that. And that's fabric that people don't mind giving away, but there's also a lot of labor that goes into fabric
and even just moving it around. And I mean, the idea of giving, thinking of the fabrics that are in here, and I can say now that there's loads of very, very high-end bridal wear fabric. The idea of giving away like a 50-meter roll of silk with lace, no. It's impossible. Of course, someone would just store it in their garage forever if that was their alternative.
I mean, I definitely would. There's like stuff with beading in it, like beadwork and like loads of jacquards. So there's like lots of really special fabrics, not just here, but I think even just in other people's studios. So even like Deborah, she had lots of like amazing textiles. She had like linens, check fabric, like all sorts of fabrics. So I think we all feel something to our fabrics for some reason.
I'm sentimental about it too. I can do the occasional swap, but it's all stuff that I didn't really like in the first place. And bought anyway. Okay, well, thank you so much for talking to me. This is actually much more complex than I thought it was.
So hopefully this visit gave you a bit of a flavor as to why I was so excited about Last Yarn. It's pretty rare for a home sewist to be able to access fabric like this, and they are adding designers to the platform regularly. One recent addition I was particularly excited about was Sophie Hawkins. Sophie is a London-based designer who actually goes back and forth to Japan. She designs these unisex collections using lots of incredible Japanese denim. If you've never experienced the magic that is like gorgeous, deep indigo Japanese denim, you're missing out. This fabric is really incredible, just a great texture, great depth of color. You can go into Sophie's portal on the Last Yarn website and browse the fabric she's offloading. Some of the fabrics were even specially dyed for her collections, and she provides some usage recommendations. Of course, Last Yarn is new, so there's not too many designers on there yet, but I'm really excited to see where this is headed. Now, you might be wondering what the so what is here. Is Deadstock more sustainable than buying new fabric, and what's the best way to incorporate it into your making? Like everything else, it really depends. So question 1, do Deadstock suppliers keep fabric out of landfill? On the whole, I'd probably say yes. When deadstock comes from accidental overproduction or leftover materials which otherwise serve no purpose, it does prevent those fabrics from being discarded. However, there are lots of fabrics which are labeled as deadstock, which really aren't genuine waste product. You could also argue that if a mill is intentionally overproducing with the knowledge that the fabric can be sold on, that doesn't really count as waste. However, there's many situations where that information isn't something as a consumer that you can access. What matters more is that if you buy deadstock fabric, you use it, you pass it on to someone who will if you're not going to use it, and then once you have a garment, wear it to death and try to dispose of it responsibly if you can. Of course, if you do see a seller advertising deadstock, don't be afraid to ask some questions about where it came from and just try to look for those opportunities to buy from designers directly where you can. Now, second question, is deadstock fabric more sustainable or ethical than new fabric? Again, it really depends on what fabric you're buying as well as where your focus is. The reality is that the further you get from a fabric's initial sourcing, the less you know about the environmental and labor practices that went into making it. Similarly, there's going to be issues around the sustainability of the fibers you're buying themselves. So if you're buying deadstock from a cheap fast fashion brand, that fabric can be made from like a very low grade quality polyester or viscose. It's effectively been produced to be made into a garment that someone's going to wear only a handful of times before throwing away. Let me show you an example of what I mean. I have two fabrics here to show you, both of which are viscose. This first viscose is 2 pounds a meter from Walthamstow Market, and I bought it knowing that it was basically crap. Like, you can see how flimsy this is. The fabric pills easily, it's not going to last super well, but I bought it as a factory remnant specifically so that I can use it for toiling. Now I can contrast this with this other viscose from Fabric Godmother here. You can really see how much more substantial the fabric feels, the weight is better, the surface is smoother. Now the Fabric Godmother viscose isn't deadstock, but I think it will take many more years to end up back in a landfill. If you do want to take this further, instead of viscose, you can think about buying a newly produced tencel, which is almost always going to outperform viscose in terms of sustainability. In many cases with deadstock, you're not necessarily going to know fiber composition, especially again when you're buying from these like big mill dumps, much less any detail on where it was made. That makes it much harder as an end consumer to judge it fairly. Therefore, deadstock isn't really a silver bullet or any automatic indicator of sustainability. Its ethics really depend on its quality, its source, and of course your use of it. Lastly, how do you decide which deadstock fabrics are worth using? When I'm evaluating deadstock, there's a few different things that I like to keep in mind. First, I try to prioritize quality as much as I can. As an example, Rainbow Fabrics often has Gap deadstock denim, which is fantastic. I use it for most of the jeans that I make. Similarly, here in London, we have New Craft House. They're working directly with a number of designers and pull in some stunning fabrics, all of which are designer deadstock. If you're in North America, you have Blackbird Fabrics, Lyrical Fabrics as well, Stone Mountain and Daughter, and of course, Core Fabrics. It's when I see that super cheap Zara viscose deadstock, though, that I do try to remember that the fabric just hasn't been made with longevity in mind. That's also why I was so interested in Last Yarn and wanted to share this company with my audience. Small-scale, high-end designers just aren't interested in using crap materials, and they tend to know a lot more about them. In the case of Last Yarn, I've even seen some of the designers noting the exact mill the fabric was sourced from, just because these fabrics were created especially for them originally. Are the fabrics going to be 3 pounds a meter? No. But it's still at a huge discount compared to buying new fabrics of the same caliber. I do want to end this video with a note about perspective. Basically, you don't need to stress too much about your home sewing. That's not to say sustainability and ethics don't matter to me. They absolutely do, and when there's an opportunity to make a more sustainable choice, I would always encourage it. But we just have to be real with ourselves. Home sewing is not the major driver of the environmental crises and labor crises that most of us, or most of my audience, I suspect, cares about. I'm not going to stand here and rattle off statistics about polyester and landfills, the devastating impacts of mass-produced clothing. I think that you're aware of these things. But what frustrates me is seeing people online arguing things like, I don't know, sewing more garments than you need is just as bad as fast fashion. Unless you're secretly running a sweatshop in your basement, you're just really not the problem here. This type of moral outrage might boost Instagram engagement, but it really does nothing to hold large corporations accountable or push lawmakers for real change. As you think about how you prioritize your finite resources on these issues, always remember that systemic problems require systemic solutions. Instead, what I want this video to do is encourage you to be choosy with your dead stock. Cheap fabric is not truly cheap if the quality is poor and the garment won't last. We can't really claim to be saving anything from landfill if our garments fall apart or the fabric doesn't work, just because we're only delaying the trip to landfill by maybe, I don't know, a handful of weeks or months. Prioritize suppliers who are consistent with their quality, and when you see companies like Last Yarn around, please try and support them. It's kind of a win-win here. You get access to great fabric, and you're helping smaller, independent designers who probably live close by to you. You're keeping your money in your community. To help you do that, I'm going to be running a giveaway. My first ever giveaway, I'm going to be doing 2 50-pound gift cards to Last Yarn. One has been generously gifted by them, and one is coming from my own pocket just as a thank you to this community and to my audience. We can think of it as like a Valentine's Day present. I'm going to be running the giveaway over on Instagram just because it's much easier to do that over there than on here. And by the time this video is live, you'll see a giveaway post on my Insta feed ready to go. I'm just at the same handle, StephZone. I do want to note that Last Yarn is UK based, so if you are outside the UK, shipping and customs might make this one cost prohibitive. Never fear though, I'm going to be doing many more giveaways this year. It's something that I'm really looking forward to doing, and I'm absolutely going to be varying the suppliers just so that my full audience can feel included. Before I let you go, I do want to hear from you, as always. Do you have access to Deadstock fabric where you live? Is there anything else you'd like to know about fabric sourcing or how to evaluate fabric quality? It's a topic I really enjoy, so I'm happy to do more videos on it if you're interested. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll be back soon with another video. I have quite a few ideas floating around. I think that they're all pretty good. You're not going to want to miss them. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!